Well, hello everybody, how are you doing this fine day? Hope you're enjoying your week. Before we get started, you might want to hide your children, cover their little baby virgin eyes, because we're talking about some adult shit today. That's right, Hellraiser. So just to get some stuff out of the way, I know that as I'm talking about Hellraiser, people are gonna disagree with some of the things I say. But you can't really blame me for that, because the canon of Hellraiser is, fucked? I mean, come on, guys. Within the Hellraiser universe, you have movies that are canon, and then you have movies that aren't canon. You have comics that are canon and comics that aren't canon. The canon comics conflict with the canon movies. And then you have the books that were the original and were considered for a long time to be the true canon until they were later retconned to match the movies that are canon, but not all of the movies that are canon, because some of the canon movies conflict with the other canon movies. Basically, this whole universe is just chaos. There's no reasonable way that I could follow one true continuity. It's not possible. It's shitty. So instead, what I'm doing today is I'm taking all of this different stuff that exists and trying to sort of piece it together and try to use what works. And I know I'm not going to use everything that works that other people might say would work better. I'm aware. That's the beautiful thing about humans having like different minds and different forms of free will and shit. You know, like variety. But the hope is that I can piece it all together in a way that is entertaining for you guys at home to sit down in front of your fucking TVs or phones and watch. And really, at the end of the day, isn't that all that matters? But I'm wasting up your time. Let's get started. So first up, obviously, we need to talk about whatever the survivors need to survive, right? Like, you know, kind of important. And that is going to be a location that is in the Hellraiser universe known as the Labyrinth, or Labyrinth. I don't know if they put the in front of it. And no, you're not going to find any David Bowie in this labyrinth. That is, in fact, the name of the hell dimension that exists within Hellraiser. And I know there's an argument among the fan base about whether or not the Labyrinth from Hellraiser is the same hell as the biblical hell, like with Jesus and shit. But I think this is a dumb argument because, no, clearly it's not. They have very little in common. One looks like a BDSM nightclub, and the other one looks like a fiery pit of despair. They're two totally different places. The Labyrinth doesn't have a Satan. Literally none of the demons that are in the Bible are actually in this version of hell. The whole theme and vibe is completely different. You don't have to die to go there. It really doesn't have anything to do with sin or not sinning. They're two completely different locations. I have never understood people saying that that's the same hell from the Bible. Now, unlike my Rambo video where I discussed how Rambo could actually avoid being taken by Pinhead and the Cenobites and brought to the Labyrinth, this one's going to completely skip all that and basically just say what would happen if these characters already found themselves in the Labyrinth. Like, it doesn't matter how they got there. Maybe they went there on purpose because of some sort of mission or thing that they had to do. Maybe they were taken by force. Either way, something happened and they're already there currently and have to basically escape or just see what would happen if they were actually sent there. And that's it. That's the whole challenge. It's basically a fucking prison escape challenge, but in, you know, fucking hell. So what is Labyrinth's whole deal? So a long time ago, there was this guy, I don't remember his name, it was some kind of French dude, of course, he was fucking French. He created this box called the, whatever his name was, configuration, but that was too hard to say, so they just started calling it the Lament configuration. And there's a couple of different versions of this character depending on the canon. Some of the versions are like an okay dude who just accidentally created a demon puzzle box. Some of them are a dude who was manipulated, but the version that makes more sense, as well as the original version, is sort of like an Aleister Crowley type, where he's a guy who's really into dark magic and he's a serial killer, and he creates it on purpose, trying to summon demons into his world. I think this one makes the most amount of sense because you don't accidentally create a puzzle box that summons demons. Like how do you do that on accident? Even if you're French, that doesn't make sense. He's eventually betrayed by a friend and murdered and all this, and he didn't even fight back because, of course, not French. And then this puzzle box just got released in the ether, and anyone who solves this fucking puzzle box summons the Cenobites that drag their ass all the way to their hell dimension, the Labyrinth. Which, I gotta say, that's gotta be the least efficient way possible to get people to be pulled into the Labyrinth. And then originally, the Cenobites would only take people who were like super fucking heathens, basically. I mean, how many people are genius level puzzle box solvers as well as sociopathic hedonists? That can't be a particularly large portion of the population. I can definitely see why they've widened their gaze to just start basically taking everybody. I mean, shit, the fucking book, The Hellbound Heart, says that it would take a genius like a week to solve the puzzle. You'd have to imagine that most people would just give up after like, I don't know, 10 minutes, if that. This is like the least scariest horror movie ever because it could never never happen to me. I'm not solving that fucking puzzle box. Anyway, once these fucking sexually promiscuous Einsteins solve the goddamn box, a bunch of Cenobites appear in front of you, which again look like fucking BDSM mutants, essentially. And they take you, they pull you into this other world, and the labyrinth is this massive fucking sprawling infinite universe that's just one giant labyrinth that's stated to be impossible to escape from anybody who doesn't actually live there, because it's shifting walls and the labyrinth just constantly changes and moves, and it's a very difficult labyrinth to solve, basically. Concepts like time and life or death don't really seem to matter there, as nobody ages and nobody can die, whether they're human or not. They can be skinned, sliced up, pulled apart, burned, whatever, and they feel all that pain, but no matter what, they don't die. And the Cenobites basically just come up with insane, ridiculous, over-the-top tortures to do to each and every person that is very specific to the person themselves and like what kind of person they are. At one point in the comics, there was this guy who was like super lonely and can never really find love, and he felt like he can never really fall in love, and then eventually he is mentally mind-fucked and manipulated into falling in love with one of the Cenobites, and the Cenobites torture him by crucifying him up against a wall, skinning him, removing his face, and then basically having sex with a bunch of other dudes in front of him all the time. So essentially he's been cursed to just hang there and be a cuck forever. Huh. You know, I never really noticed how many Frenchmen were in this story. And I can go through dozens upon dozens upon dozens of different tortures, horrible things that happen to all kinds of different people throughout the course of the comics and the movies, and they're all terrible. Just know that they're fucking terrible. I'm getting really tired of getting demonetized, so just know they're bad. And the Cenobites are these otherworldly creatures that live in the labyrinth that basically act as not only the torturers, but also the wardens that stop people from escaping. And these motherfuckers have all sorts of different powers, from soul manipulation to bodily control to obviously pain manipulation, illusion creation, mind control. At one point, Pinhead, who is admittedly the most powerful of the Cenobites, grows to the size of planet Earth. They have creation abilities. For instance, Pinhead is oftentimes shown just creating chains out of nothing that come out of nowhere, and then just hook onto people and split them apart and drag them places. He's big on chains, but he can really just create any object he wants out of nowhere. And the labyrinth itself, if not alive on its own, seems to be able to be manipulated by the Cenobites, as they can control the hallways, and you know, they just basically can have it form into whatever they need it to form into to allow them to torture the people there as effectively as humanly possible. They can create and control the elements. They can shoot some kind of fucking energy blast. I don't know what kind of blast it is. It's like a glowy, like purple, whitish sort of energy. I don't know what this is. Just generic sci-fi bullshit energy. They have telekinesis. They can read your mind. They can teleport. They can shapeshift into whatever form they want to be. Basically, any power that they need to make you suffer as much as humanly possible, they have that power. All of their powers are based around fucking with people. But more important than any of that, the thing that really makes them dangerous, well, that's not necessarily true, because the stuff I just named makes them pretty dangerous. But something that makes them more dangerous is the fact that they basically can't be killed. They're incorporeal beings that cannot be hurt by any mortal weapon. In fact, the only two weaknesses we know they have is that Cenobites can kill each other, and certain items that are created by God can also kill them. God being the Leviathan, which is just like a giant fucking shape that exists that like, he just like sits there over the top of the labyrinth. I don't know what it does or what the purpose of it is, but apparently it bestows power to the Cenobites and controls the labyrinth and shit. And it's like God. And if it creates a weapon, that weapon can be used to kill the Cenobites. And that's it. That's basically everything they can do. So we have to take our survivors, throw them in this fucked up hellscape, and see, like, can they leave? And if they can't leave, can they do well and somehow, like, exist here successfully? I don't know. Let's fucking find out. First up, we have Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So before I start talking about Angel, I kind of have to explain, like, what vampirism is in the Buffy universe, because it's quite a bit different than you would normally say. Like, when someone gets turned into a vampire in Buffy, it's not just them getting turned into a vampire. At least not all the time. Basically, how it's described in the show is that when a person becomes a vampire, their soul goes away. Them who they were disappears. And then some sort of evil force or entity enters their body and basically takes the shape of whatever it was they were when they were humans. So the demon that goes in their body doesn't have any personality or memories or thought. It's just this sort of evil force. And then based on who you were, it just sort of fills that out. You basically become an evil version of whatever you were before. This is sort of conflicted with at times, but it's not in terms of Angel. So Angel originally was this Irish dude who was kind of a bum, and he didn't really have any desires or wants. He was this empty, vacant, selfish, spoiled, sort of kind of shitty person. And what ended up happening is that when he was turned into a vampire, there was just so little to him. He was just such a vacant, empty person that the evil entity, when it came inside him, there was nothing to fill. So it basically just became wanton, pure evil, which made Angel the most evil vampire that has ever lived within the Buffy universe. By the way, this is not me like psychoanalyzing Angel and coming up with this conclusion on my own through like story hints. They straight up tell you this is what happened. Eventually, Angel has his soul restored, and when he does, he's so like racked with guilt of all the terrible things that he did when he was a vampire, like psychologically torturing people and murdering their families in front of them, eating babies alive, like literally the most evil things that you could possibly imagine, that when he got his soul back, he basically splintered in his psyche, and now he doesn't really consider himself the same as the person he was when he was a vampire. So the vampire version of him has his own name, Angelus, and considered the most evil dude, and he can't fucking stand Angel, who is Angel when he has a soul, who's like a good dude who wants to help people. And this sort of sets up the dichotomy of his character. Angel blames himself for the things that he did, but he doesn't consider Angelus to be him, at least most of the time. The story is very metaphorical. Every monster is a stand-in for something, whether it be addiction or growing up or sexual promiscuity. Everything means something, so nothing has a like concrete rule. For instance, there's a vampire named Spike who also gets his soul back, but he doesn't consider his demon self, the version of him that didn't have a soul, to be a different person than the version of him with a soul. He sees them both as the exact same person, and there is no like alternate personality. And that tells you a lot about who Spike is as a person. Spike doesn't really feel bad about the things that he's done in the past. He just sort of accepts that they happen, and he's fine with it. He just knows that he's gonna do better from this point on. Angel doesn't really feel that way, therefore he sort of sees this as a different version of himself. It's all, like I said, it's all very metaphorical, and there's multiple ways you can interpret the story, so I'm not gonna get into all that. Just know it's a pretty fucking good show from the 90s. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is good. Angel, which is the spin-off that has Angel in it, is better. Angel's fucking amazing, and Angel Season 5 is one of the best seasons of television you could possibly watch. So if you haven't seen them, go watch them. They're super fucking 90s. Like if you're not a huge fan of the 90s, you might have an issue, but like if you're okay with 90s shit, then you know, that's a bonus. Anyway, in terms of actual skills and abilities, there isn't a whole lot. Like Angel has super strength, he's faster than a regular human, he's generally just a superior human. Put him up to like, not Captain American levels of superiority, but he's just like above human levels. He burns in the sun like every other vampire, and he has very high combat skill. That's about it. He doesn't have much else. Like, there's no crazy power or hacks or anything when it comes to Angel. So how would Angel do if he got thrown in Labyrinth? He'd do fucking terribly. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. In fact, Angel has actually been in a Hell Dimension before. It was only a couple of months or maybe a year or so for the people who weren't in the Hell Dimension, but the Hell Dimension itself, time moved significantly slower, so he was actually in there for like 100 years. And when he came back, he was basically driven insane, and he started like, he couldn't speak, and he couldn't function normally. Like he was acting like a wild dog. His psyche was completely broken, and it took Buffy several weeks, possibly months, to try and get him to be some semblance of a normal fucking person again. And it should also be noted that he did not escape that Hell Dimension. He was summoned. Like someone else got him out of it. So if asking him how Angel would do if he went to the Labyrinth, there's very little he could do. The Cenobites are considerably more powerful than he is. They would strap him up, they would torture the shit out of him, and eventually, just like it did before, his fucking mind would crack and break under the pressure. He doesn't have this inhuman levels of will and determination that would allow him to get through this stuff unscathed. He's a relatively normal dude. And honestly, it wouldn't go any differently than if like a regular skilled human were taken by them. He's never shown to have enhanced enough intelligence to escape their torture and solve the labyrinth and get out of there, or fight back against the Cenobites. He's just not that kind of character. So yeah, Angel's fucked. Next up we have Selene. Selene. Is it possible for your balls to drop twice? Selene, this fucking gorgeous specimen, is an elder super genetically enhanced vampire with like the blood of the first immortal to ever live. She's like way better than normal vampires. She's like Angel times 1,000. Trained for a century by a militaristic vampire cult to hunt down and kill werewolves for an eternal war. For revenge because she believes they killed her family, but they actually didn't. In fact, the guy who took her in actually killed her family, and then she killed him. And then after that, the movies got super fucking convoluted. In terms of powers, like I said, she's basically Angel times 1,000. She's stronger than him, faster than him. She has a really fast regen, unlike anything that he has. She's completely immune to sunlight. It doesn't hurt her at all. And she is a significantly better fighter than Angel is. Also, you know, way nicer to look at. Goddamn. I'd swim through shark-infested piss to lick this woman's toes. Don't you fucking judge me, bitch. I ain't no perv. I got eyes. What am I supposed to do? Rip them out of my fucking head? Look at her. So what exactly would happen if this sweet, sweet Angel was sent to the hellscape that is the labyrinth of Hellraiser? Sadly, not a whole lot different than what would happen to Angel. I'm not saying these superior skills won't help her. They will. She may actually be able to escape because of her enhanced strength and speed and shit. And due to her healing factor, she'll likely be able to escape things that other people normally wouldn't. Like, for instance, if the Cenobites decide to, say, put a bunch of hooks in her or tie her up or crucify her or anything, she could probably just rip her flesh and skin, her soft, smooth, perfect flesh, and then that would allow her to get away in a way that a lot of the other people who are locked here won't be able to because they don't have the power to regenerate. Basically, if they rip their muscle, they just can't use that arm anymore. But she will actually be able to heal it back. So this will allow her to escape and escape far more times than other characters will be able to. The problem is that her intelligence isn't necessarily in like puzzle solving or labyrinth solving or escaping hell type shit. Her intelligence is all about investigation and hunting. That's what she is. She's a hunter of werewolves. Outside of that very specific purpose, her intelligence is just like a skilled soldier. And she's gonna need something more than just an ability to fight and kill things in order to escape from hell. Because when it comes down to it, she doesn't have any way of actually killing the Cenobites. So they're never not going to be a problem for her. And when it comes to her ability to withstand pain, while she definitely has enhanced abilities in that particular department, like she's had her flesh burned from the sun and healed from it, and it clearly bothered her, but you know, she wasn't like permanently fucked up from it or anything. She's been stabbed and sliced and thrown around and beat up. It's a pretty decent pain resistance, but it's not like having your entire insides ripped out and psychologically tortured by demons from hell. Like, that's a different level. And there's no real evidence that her mind won't fucking shatter from the insane levels of torture that she's gonna have to undergo while in the labyrinth. So while I think she'll last a lot longer than someone like Angel, and she'll constantly try to escape, and she'll constantly keep trying to fight back, it's only a matter of time before her psyche breaks. And even if she does escape, she doesn't really have a way of getting through the labyrinth or getting out of the actual dimension itself. The Cenobites and the werewolves of Underworld are just two very different levels of shit to deal with, and she's just not gonna be able to do it. The best she can do is that maybe with enough time, possibly she could become a Cenobite herself, but honestly, who the fuck wants that? That would be the film equivalent of those two assholes who got arrested because they threw soup on that painting. You know, that whole thing. Why would you just want to destroy beauty? We don't have much of that left. Leave it alone. Next up, we have Constantine or Constantine. I don't give a shit which one. From DC Comics. And this is another one of those situations where I gotta sort of humble this dude a little bit, because much like Batman and Dr. Doom, people really like to exaggerate this dude's abilities, like to an insane degree. I've heard people say this motherfucker is equivalent to Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, Lucifer, Zatanna. I was like, no, he's fucking not. Based on what? He's always shown to be a lesser magic user than pretty much everybody else. I mean, he's a pretty basic dude. His stories aren't even heavily action-based. They're basically detective stories where he has to figure out different shit in these weird supernatural environments. There have been multiple occasions where characters point out that he's in terrible shape and that he's a smoker and an alcoholic. Generally speaking, he completely avoids any form of combat at all. But I know where these types of claims are coming from. It's coming from the fact that his stories are very, odd. They're written in a very strange way. There's a lot of really weird shit that happens, and people like to take these weird things and basically give him credit that that's a power that he has, and they sort of sell it as if that's a power that he can just pull out of his ass at any time. And no, that's not the case. There's usually a whole thing that has to go on in order for that to happen. Just to give you some examples of things that I've seen people actually try to say, Constantine can't die because he has resurrection and can keep coming back from the dead. No, there are storylines where he comes back from the dead, but it's not an instant thing. There's a whole fucking storyline and shit he has to go through in order to come back. It's not a power that he possesses. He just knows the rules of the afterlife and can sort of circumvent it to come back. But it's never instant, and there's always a whole bunch of shit he has to come through in order to do it. So does he have resurrection? Yeah, technically, but you're leaving out a lot of fucking context there. I've heard people say that Constantine has power over subjective reality, because if he deems that he doesn't want to take damage from someone, he won't take damage from them. Bullshit. Yes, there's a specific story, possibly multiple stories, I might have missed one, where he's fighting a specific supernatural being and he basically deems that he won't get harmed, and he doesn't get harmed. However, the comics make it very clear that this is only possible because the supernatural being that he is fighting's entire power set is based on belief. Literally anybody can do this. It's not just a John Constantine thing. And this is sort of the case with all of the abilities that they give him. There are certain rules and steps and things that happen over the course of the stories where he can sort of get out of situations in very weird ways. But it's not like it's something he can just pull out of his ass and use like it's a goddamn superpower. One of the feats people say that's his greatest feat is that he stripped Swamp Thing of all of his power. And Swamp Thing, if anyone knows, is an extremely powerful character. Okay, fine. And he did it by using the wishing matches. Wishing matches are something that is not in his normal repertoire of stuff. It's something he gets for one storyline, and he uses it, and he tries to steal away Swamp Thing's power, and it works for 1 hour. And then after that hour, his powers come back and it's back to normal. People legitimately believe that this man is multiversal or complicated multiversal, whatever fucking bullshit tier they just made up on a forum with a bunch of not friends. Hey, guys, guess what? Complex multiversal isn't a fucking thing. You just made it up. So what exactly can Constantine do if he's not this godlike being that everyone likes to hail him up to be? I mean, he's just like a sorcerer guy. He can see ghosts and invisible things. He can see through illusions. He knows magic. He can open up locks with spells. He can summon ghosts to talk to after they've been dead if he needs information. He's a master of investigating weird supernatural phenomenon. He makes deals with other very powerful multiversal god level beings so that he can accomplish the things that he needs to accomplish. He knows the weaknesses of a large variety of different supernatural creatures that he can then deal with when he comes across them. If I had to list his fucking powers, it would just be magic. You ever seen anyone do fucking magic before? That's what he can do. So how would he do if he was thrown in the labyrinth? That really depends on exactly how it all goes down. Constantine has the skills necessary to escape the labyrinth. It's just a matter of how he uses them and if Pinhead and them use theirs better. Like, one thing that's gonna go a really long way for him is that most of the hacks that Pinhead and the rest of the Cenobites have aren't really going to affect John. He's not affected by things like soul manipulation, mind manipulation, illusion manipulation, biological manipulation, like a lot of shit that they would normally do to keep people tortured for very long periods of time within the labyrinth. He doesn't really care about that shit doesn't even affect him, and the few that does, he's aware enough that he'll be able to realize where he is or what's happening. Like, if he were to be trapped in some sort of illusion, Constantine is skilled and experienced enough to know that he's in an illusion and get out of it. And this is the case for a lot of the abilities that the Cenobites have. He also has a lot of abilities that he has that will actually be able to work on the Cenobites. Like, for instance, he commonly uses things like a binding spell that can actually lock someone at a certain location. If he's being chased by Cenobites and he wants them to fucking stop chasing him, with a wave of his hand, he can do that. It's not permanent, it's a temporary spell, but it can work in that moment to help him get away from whatever it is happening. One big problem he's gonna run into is that he doesn't have a way of actually killing any of the Cenobites. He has certain relics and items and things like this that help him kill supernatural beings, but nothing that is specifically designed to kill something like a Cenobite. Cenobites are shown to not be affected by just any holy relic. There is a part within the Hellraiser comic where a priest tries to fight against the Cenobites using holy relics like crosses and shit, and it doesn't do anything. You can't just use any relic that's holy. You have to use something that is specifically designed to fight them, or at least something that has some sort of grander purpose. Not just holy damage, but basically something that can eliminate all evil or encompasses more than just a specific thing. Most of Constantine's weapons are very specifically made to deal with very specific things, and the Cenobites don't really fall in that. So the best he can do is sort of survive and stall, not necessarily overcome the Cenobites. There's also a pretty major weakness that Constantine has where most of his defenses work against magical abilities. So, like, his coat, for instance, his trench coat defends against magical attacks. There's really no evidence that any of the Cenobites' attacks are magical. So not only Constantine's trench coat, but also a lot of the other stuff that he uses to defend himself won't really work against the Cenobites. Other than his basic resistances to certain hacks, like I said before, with the illusion and all that kind of stuff. So we eventually come to the question, can Constantine actually escape the labyrinth? And this is all relying on two things. One, his mental sanity, and if he could stay sane enough to actually escape eventually, because most people are driven completely mad long before they actually figure out how to leave. And secondly, can he actually solve the labyrinth, which is specifically designed to be unsolvable by anybody who isn't the Cenobites? And to both of those questions, I say they're definitely possible. Well, I wouldn't say that Constantine is like a master at taking pain or anything. He does have certain techniques that will help him. Like, for instance, he has the ability to meditate to lessen certain pains to sort of fight through certain forms of torture. Now, will that meditation help him dim pain from, like, pulling his lungs out of his asshole? No, probably not. But it'll help a little bit. But mostly it's going to be Constantine's intelligence is going to help him here. This is not the first time he's been to a hell dimension, and it's not the first time he would have had to get out of it. He's just not a stranger to things like suffering, mental and psychological torture, physical torture. He's gone through a lot of this shit before. And while this will probably be worse than anything he's ever faced, it's still not out of the realm of something that he can do. And his intelligence is going to help him when he's trying to solve the labyrinth. As difficult as the labyrinth is to solve, it has been solved by people in the story. I mean, in the very first film, there was a guy who was shown solving the labyrinth, as well as resisting the psychological damage that normally comes from torture that you would suffer there. Now, for the torture part, yes, this guy was actually a hedonist and he absolutely loved pain. Like, there's literally a scene where they start ripping him apart and he's licking his lips in enjoyment of it. So not really a fair comparison there to Constantine, who is not like that. But as far as solving the labyrinth goes, yeah, Constantine should be smart enough to figure it out. It's really just a matter of if he can get out before the Cenobites capture him again. And you know what? That's kind of the thing about being immortal in hell. He can't die once he's there. He's just going to keep getting tortured forever. Eventually, he's going to get out. It might take a very long time, and he might be psychologically fucked by the time he gets out, but he'll probably get out. I'm going to say specifically with this one, I think he's going to get out. But once he does, he will never be the same. Because he would have gone through pretty much the most terrifying and horrible things he's ever gone through in the entire history of his comic book run. And it would likely take a very long time for him to do this. Probably many, many years. So good on you, Constantine. Last up, and certainly not least, we have Hellboy from the comics, not the movies, very different character. And, you know, if I keep doing this, people are going to start thinking that I'm biased or something. But, Hellboy's going to do really well here. So Hellboy is the son of a demon known as the Fallen One, who's not the devil, but he's a very high-ranking demon in hell. Anyway, this dude was a dick, and when he had a baby with a witch from Earth, he decided to cut the arm of his baby, like, off completely, and then replaced it with a rock hand, because this rock hand was a key that was going to summon dark gods from space to come and do all sorts of things. This basically set him up for failure, or success, I guess, depending on the way you look at it, as his arm was literally the key that would start the fucking apocalypse on Earth. But to the Fallen One's aggravation, he gets booted from hell through a portal onto Earth, and gets raised by this guy who's like a pretty decent dude, and he's a Catholic and shit, and he raises him really, really well to be like a good person. So now, the person who's supposed to bring about the apocalypse for the Fallen One and the rest of the demons doesn't want to have anything to do with that shit, and they're real pissed off about it. And this leads to a whole long comic book series involving 8 volumes of them trying to be like, hey, will you please bring about the apocalypse? And he's like, no. And they're like, fuck, okay, I'll come back later and ask again. And then they just do that for 8 volumes straight. And it is wonderful. So Hellboy in a lot of ways is very similar to Constantine. They're both investigators and essentially detectives whose whole thing is to solve paranormal issues. In fact, in Hellboy, he's literally called the world's #1 paranormal investigator. While they're both supernatural, Constantine leans more over to like mysticism, whereas Hellboy is just straight up paranormal. Ghosts, demons, goblins. They also get into a lot of folklore with things like fairies and shit. Both characters have an encyclopedic knowledge of the types of enemies that they fight, their weaknesses, and how to deal with them. Both characters have tons and tons of experience, although Hellboy has more because he's old as fuck. He's like 80-something years old at this point and has been trained since childhood to do this. They both have resistances to basically all the same shit. Like I said before, soul manipulation, illusion manipulation, biological manipulation. Basically anything any supernatural creature wants to do to Hellboy, they're not gonna be able to do it. Hellboy has been shown being able to fight his way out of whatever weird, fucked up juju shit they want to put him in. However, the main thing that puts Hellboy above Constantine in this particular list are 2 things. One, physically, he is far superior in pretty much every way. He's stronger, faster, better trained, has a really fucking good healing factor, and his pain tolerance is through the fucking roof to the point that the Cenobites won't actually even be able to torture him. Like, how do you torture someone like Hellboy who's literally been torn to shreds in his own series on multiple occasions and just puts himself back together without any issues and continues to fight? Unlike anybody else on this list, no amount of torture that the Cenobites can do to him is going to make him lose his mind and go insane. It's just sort of another day at the office for him. And the second thing that puts Hellboy above Constantine is his right hand of doom, that fucking rock arm I was talking about. Now, the movies don't really go into this, and I'm not going to go too much into it because there's a lot of lore here, but basically that right hand was the hand of this angelic-like creature that was created by God, who created the universe, and basically was one of the people who helped create the universe and destroy the... Anyway, it has a lot of power. It has the power to create and destroy basically to a limitless extent. And while Hellboy can't utilize that power, it does have some things that he can do with it. For instance, anything he hits or touches, he can kill with it. It doesn't matter what the creature he's fighting's weakness is. Like, let's say he's fighting some kind of supernatural creature where the only way to kill it is to burn it. Any other way you kill it doesn't matter. You can cut its head off, you can stake it in the heart, doesn't matter. It won't die, you have to burn it. Well, Hellboy having this right arm, if he grabs this dude's head with his right arm and crushes it, it's fucking dead. It doesn't matter what the rules are, the supernatural paranormal rules are, the hand can break the rules. Which means Hellboy should absolutely be able to kill any Cenobite that he comes across. He's the only person on this list so far that can actually permanently put them down, which means they're not really as big of a threat to him. Unlike Constantine, who really all he can do is kind of escape them to try and leave the labyrinth, Hellboy could actually stand his own ground and fight against them and overcome them, and that on top of his massive healing factor, as well as his high pain tolerance, as well as his insanely increased strength compared to what Constantine can do, just means that he's gonna have a lot easier time escaping and dealing with the situations here. And honestly, this is without me counting a power that he's shown having towards the end of Hellboy, where he can literally pass between multiple dimensions casually. So this is a power that Hellboy gets where basically at one point he dies and he's about to go to heaven, and before he goes through the doors of heaven, he's met by this friend of his who also died, and he said, like, are you ready to die? Like, do you want to die? And he's like, I do, but I kind of have shit I gotta do back on Earth. And he's like, well, then just go back to Earth. And he basically discovers that he has the power to just travel between dimensions. If he wants to go to hell, he can go to hell. He can come back and go to heaven. Hellboy doesn't die unless he chooses to stay dead. Eventually, towards the end of the comic, like in the end of Volume 7, beginning of Volume 8, I don't remember exactly, he is pulled down to hell by this witch bitch, and once he's down there, he makes the conscious decision to stay, and the entirety of the 8th volume, called Hellboy in Hell, he's just in there by choice, basically. Which means that even if Hellboy is dragged to the labyrinth by the Cenobites, he could just say bye and then just fucking vanish and boop, he's back on Earth. He doesn't have to stay there. Just like in his own series, he's only there as long as he wants to be. So the only way that I see this going down is if Hellboy goes to the labyrinth specifically because he wants to solve whatever problem that he wants to solve during some form of investigation. Maybe it would be to wipe out the Cenobites permanently so they won't keep coming to Earth stealing people. Maybe it's to lock off the doorway between the two worlds to stop them from coming through. Something like that. Whatever it is, he can go down there and stop it from happening. In fact, in his own story, the reason why he stays in hell is so that he could stop all the shit that's happening on Earth from the inside. That, and he believes that if he goes back to Earth, he's gonna cause more problems than he would if he just stayed in hell. But yeah, by the end of the Hellboy series, he takes over all of hell and becomes essentially the king of hell, where he deems it that nobody can fucking leave, go to Earth, and start causing a bunch of problems anymore. And I kind of see something very similar happening here. It's almost as if Hellboy was created for the sole purpose of countering the Cenobites. Literally nothing they do could work on him, and he could kill them with ease. Like, I'm imagining Pinhead showing up with that deep voice and that sort of monologuing that he does, you know? You know, him trying to say some scary shit like, I'll pull your soul apart. And then all of a sudden, a big fucking brick fist hits him in the face, shatters his goddamn teeth. Fucking face all pushed in, smashes against the wall, laying there looking all stupid, going like, wait, hold up. And then Hellboy just fucking bearing down on top of him with his giant fucking gorilla fist, caving his goddamn skull in. Yeah, pain ain't so easy to deal with when it means you're fucking dead, does it, you bitch? So yeah, as I'm talking about it, I'm starting to realize that this was a really bad pick because there's literally nothing the Cenobites can do. I should have really put this in the Hellboy survival challenge and been like, could Pinhead survive the Hellboy universe? But I sort of answered the question here. No, it can't. He would basically become a single issue of the comic like so many others, where Hellboy just had to deal with this weird supernatural event. And then he'd fuck him up and just move on. It's fine. But that's all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, if you join the membership, you get videos early. And do not forget, this Saturday, we are having an upcoming stream where we're going to make a martial arts movie tier list. Going through all sorts of martial arts characters and then tiering them, and we're gonna do it on stream. There's gonna be people watching. We're gonna ask you guys to get involved and tell us who should go where. It's gonna be a whole thing. We just did action movie heroes last week. Now we're doing martial arts movie heroes. Every week we'll do a different one unless I feel like doing something else. So be sure to look out for that. And always remember, y'all stay safe out there, you hear?